92 days. That's how long Lukas Kyle has been missing. What's strange isn't that he's gone. It's how little anyone is talking about him. Season 3 keeps pushing us toward Juliet, the algorithm, and the growing unrest inside Silo 18. Naturally, that's where our attention goes too. Meanwhile, Lukas has quietly disappeared from the story, almost as if the show expects us to move on. I don't think that's accidental. In fact, I think the longer Lukas stays off screen, the more important he becomes, because before he vanished, he crossed a line that no one else in Silo 18 had crossed. He reached the hidden chamber beneath the silo. He found the enormous metal door beneath the water. And then something happened that completely changed his place in the story. The algorithm spoke directly to him, not through Bernard, not through a screen in IT, directly. That conversation lasted only a few moments, but it may end up being one of the most important scenes in the entire season. The algorithm didn't just tell Lukas to leave. It gave him a warning. If he ever revealed what he had seen, if he ever told anyone about the hidden door, the safeguard protocol would activate. At the time, it sounded like another threat, designed to keep a secret buried. Now I'm not so sure. The more Season 3 reveals about the safeguard protocol, the more that warning feels like the moment Lukas unknowingly became the most dangerous person in Silo 18. Not because he has a weapon, not because he has power, because he has information that almost nobody else possesses. And that's why I don't think the biggest mystery is where Lukas Kyle is. The bigger mystery is why someone, or something, needed him to disappear before Juliet returned. That's the theory I want to explore. Because when you put all the clues together, Lukas starts looking less like a missing character, and more like the one person capable of changing how this entire conflict ends. There's one detail that keeps bringing me back to this idea. The algorithm never erased what Lukas learned. At least not as far as we know. That's interesting because we've now seen that memory suppression isn't some experimental technology. It's been used before, and according to the algorithm, entire silos have been reset multiple times over the last 3.5 centuries. If the algorithm can erase memories on that scale, why leave Lukas with knowledge that could threaten everything? Why warn him instead of simply making him forget? That choice feels deliberate, and whenever the show makes a deliberate choice, it's usually worth asking what the writers want us to notice. Maybe the algorithm couldn't erase his memories immediately. Maybe there were limits to what it could do without drawing attention. Or maybe it believed fear would keep Lukas silent. If that's true, then everything depends on one assumption, that Lukas obeyed. But what if he didn't? We know he kept digging for answers even after Bernard repeatedly told him to stop. Curiosity has always been one of Lukas's defining traits. It's what led him to the stars. It's what made him question the silo in the first place. And it's what eventually brought him face to face with the biggest secret beneath Silo 18. He's not the kind of person who walks away because someone tells him to, especially not after discovering something this important. That's why I have a hard time believing he simply disappeared out of fear. If Lukas vanished, I think he had a reason. And whatever that reason is, it probably connects back to that hidden door. There's another piece of this puzzle that doesn't get enough attention. When Knox tells Juliet what happened after she left, he mentions that Lukas disappeared shortly after telling people in his circle that Juliet had survived and had found another silo. That timeline matters, because it means Lukas vanished after learning two separate truths. The first was that other silos really do exist. The second was that the algorithm considered the hidden door important enough to threaten an entire population over it. Those two discoveries together completely changed his understanding of the world. At that point, Lukas knew more than almost anyone still alive inside Silo 18. He knew Bernard hadn't been imagining things. He knew the underground chamber was real, and he knew there were consequences far beyond anything happening inside the upper levels of the silo. Once you look at it that way, his disappearance starts making a lot more sense. Not because he became less important, because he became too important. Imagine for a moment that Lukas had stayed in mechanical. Imagine Juliet returning with fragments of her memories, while Lukas was standing beside her. The two of them would fill in each other's missing pieces almost immediately. Juliet has lived through events nobody else has experienced. Lukas has information that nobody else was allowed to hear. Together, they wouldn't just understand the mystery. They'd probably understand enough to challenge it. From a storytelling perspective, that's a problem. Season 3 still has a long way to go. The writers aren't ready to reveal everything yet. If Juliet and Lukas compared everything they knew this early, some of the biggest mysteries could disappear overnight. Removing Lukas from the board keeps those answers out of reach. but I don't think the writers removed him just to delay the story. I think they're preparing for the moment when bringing him back changes everything. Because if my theory is right, Lukas won't return simply to explain where he's been. He'll return because he's carrying information no one else can provide. And that brings me to another detail that suddenly feels much more significant after episode 2. Dr. Krunkovich explains that memories don't always come back through conversation. Sometimes they return through sensory connections. Objects, places, familiar experiences. Those things can unlock memories much faster than someone simply describing the past. At first, that explanation seemed like it existed only for Charlotte's storyline, but the more I thought about it, the more I wondered if the writers were quietly establishing a rule that applies to everyone, including Juliet. We've already seen how certain sights and experiences trigger fragments of her buried memories. So what happens when she comes face to face with someone who shared those experiences? Someone who stood beside her before everything changed. Someone connected to some of the most important moments she's struggling to remember. Lukas may become more than the person who answers her questions. He could become the thing that unlocks the rest of her memories, not because he possesses some special ability, but because the show has already established that memory is tied to emotional connection. In that sense, Lukas becomes something unusual, almost like a living relic, not an old object from the past, but a person carrying pieces of the past that Juliet can no longer reach on her own. If that happens, the stakes become much bigger than finding a missing engineer. The algorithm didn't just lose track of one man. It lost track of someone who could restore everything it has spent years trying to suppress. And that's exactly why I don't believe Lukas is just another missing person. I think he's the one piece the algorithm can't afford to lose. If Lukas really is carrying information that could change everything, then the obvious question is this: where is he? There are a lot of theories floating around right now, but I don't think they're all equally convincing. Some of them feel like they're trying to answer the mystery as quickly as possible. I'd rather follow the clues the show has already given us. And the first clue takes us back to the place where all of this started, the hidden chamber beneath the silo. When Lukas found that enormous metal door, he wasn't standing in an ordinary part of Silo 18. He had reached the deepest point anyone has explored on screen, a place that already feels separated from the rest of the silo. It's quiet. It's isolated. And after the rebellion destroyed sections of the lower staircases, getting down there isn't exactly easy anymore. That's why I think there's a real possibility Lukas never left. Instead of running upward, what if he stayed exactly where the algorithm found him? At first, that sounds risky. Why would anyone hide in the same place where they were threatened? But the more I thought about it, the more practical it became. Nobody expects someone to hide in the most dangerous location inside the silo. Judicial's attention is focused on the upper levels, where the unrest is spreading. Camille is dealing with the memory suppression program. The remaining leadership is trying to stop another collapse before it begins. Meanwhile, the deepest chamber has become the one place almost nobody has a reason to visit. That makes it a surprisingly effective hiding place. More importantly, Lukas already knows what's waiting there. He knows the door is real. He knows the algorithm can communicate from that location. And if there are answers left to uncover, that's where I'd expect him to look first. But there's another possibility that's even more unsettling. What if Lukas isn't hiding at all? What if he's being hidden? We've already seen how quickly the algorithm reacts when it believes a secret is about to spread. It threatened Lukas immediately. Now compare that to Juliet. Despite everything she's discovered, the algorithm has never spoken to her the way it spoke to Lukas. That difference feels intentional. Juliet is dangerous because she's uncovering pieces of the truth. Lukas is dangerous because he already knows one of the biggest truths in the entire system. There's a huge difference between chasing someone who's asking questions and dealing with someone who already has the answers. If Judicial captured him after that encounter, it would explain why nobody has heard from him. It would also explain why his disappearance happened so quietly. No public trial, no announcement, no body, just another person who suddenly ceased to exist. That's happened before inside the silo. The system has always preferred silence over spectacle. If people don't know what happened, they can't rally around it. They can't turn it into another reason to rebel. Keeping Lukas completely out of sight would be the safest option, especially if the algorithm believes he still remembers everything. But there's one theory I keep coming back to because it connects more pieces than the others. What if Lukas used the hidden door? The show still hasn't explained why that massive structure exists beneath the water. It's far too large to be decorative. and it's hidden far too carefully to be unimportant. The most obvious explanation is that it connects to something beyond Silo 18. We've already learned there are dozens of silos. So why wouldn't there also be a way to travel between them? If the founders built an entire underground civilization, creating maintenance tunnels or emergency access routes wouldn't be surprising at all. Now imagine Lukas standing in front of that door after hearing the algorithm's warning. He knows staying inside Silo 18 puts everyone at risk. He knows talking about what he discovered could activate the safeguard protocol. So instead of bringing the danger back into the silo, he walks through the door. That would completely change the meaning of his disappearance. He wouldn't be running away. He'd be removing himself from the equation. It's the kind of decision Lukas would make. He's never been driven by power. He's driven by curiosity. If another path existed, I can absolutely see him choosing to follow it, instead of returning to a place where every conversation could put thousands of lives in danger. And honestly, that possibility opens up something even bigger. What if Lukas is the first person in generations to travel between silos without permission? We've spent most of this series watching people discover that other silos exist. Lukas may already be exploring them. If that's true, then his story has quietly become much larger than Juliet's. While she's trying to uncover the truth inside one silo, Lukas could be discovering how the entire network actually works. That would make him one of the most valuable characters heading into the rest of the season. There's another reason I don't think the writers are finished with him. Lukas and Juliet have unfinished business. And I don't just mean their relationship. Narratively, they've been separated at the exact moment they needed each other most. Juliet has memories that are incomplete. Lukas has information that's incomplete. Neither of them has the full picture on their own. But together, that's different. Juliet understands what it's like beyond the silo. Lukas understands what exists beneath it. Those are two halves of the same mystery. Eventually, those halves have to come back together. Otherwise, the story never reaches its full potential. And that's why I don't believe Lukas will return, simply to explain where he's been. His return has to change the direction of the story. It has to answer questions that nobody else can answer. It has to force Juliet to confront truths she still doesn't remember. Most importantly, it has to bring the safeguard protocol back into focus, because that's the one secret connecting everything. The hidden door, the algorithm's warning, Lukas's disappearance. They're all tied to the same thing. The show keeps treating the safeguard protocol as the final line that must never be crossed, which means the one person who knows the most about that line is also the one person who's missing. I don't believe that's a coincidence. I think the writers have deliberately taken Lukas off the board because bringing him back at the right moment could completely shift the balance of power. So where is Lukas Kyle? Right now, I think there are three possibilities. He's hiding where nobody would think to look. He's being held somewhere nobody knows exists. Or he's already walked into a part of this world we haven't seen yet. Personally, I lean toward that last option. Not because the evidence confirms it, but because it would connect almost every loose thread the season has introduced so far. It would explain the hidden door. It would justify the algorithm's warning. And it would give Lukas a role that's much bigger than simply returning as another survivor. Because if he really did leave Silo 18, then while everyone else has been searching for one missing man, Lukas may have been searching for the answer that could save them all.